Kale had learned long ago that space stations were never truly quiet. Even in the deepest maintenance corridors, there was always a soft vibration under his boots. The distant hum of engines pushing against the void, and the whisper of life support systems keeping thousands of beings alive. He liked that sound. It reminded him that he was never completely alone, even when he worked by himself. The Orion Ring Station was one of the largest artificial habitats in this part of the galaxy. It circled a blue-white star and served as a meeting place for traders, scientists, diplomats, and travelers from hundreds of worlds. Humans were still new to the wider galactic community, and most of them worked jobs that others avoided. Kale was one of those humans. He repaired systems, cleaned up problems nobody wanted to touch, and moved quietly between cultures without attracting much attention.
He preferred it that way.
That morning, his handheld console blinked with a new task assignment. The message came from Central Maintenance. Environmental fluctuation detected in Sector Green. 9. Botanical Research Zone. Priority Medium. KL sighed softly and rolled his shoulders. Botanical sectors were never simple. Too many delicate ecosystems, too many unknown reactions between alien plants and station systems. Still, work was work. He walked through a transparent corridor where stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass. Ships drifted slowly outside, their lights flickering like distant fireflies. A group of tall reptilian merchants passed him, speaking in low, clicking tones. They nodded politely. Kale nodded back. Humans had a reputation now. Quietly. Dependable. Sometimes strange, but useful. Sector Green. 9 opened with a soft hiss as the airlock recognized his access code. Warm, humid air wrapped around him immediately. The scent of unfamiliar flowers filled the space, sweet and sharp at the same time. Plants glowed faintly along curved walls, their colors shifting gently from blue to violet. The environmental field stabilizer was showing irregular pulses, probably a misaligned energy node. As he moved deeper into the garden, he noticed something else. Someone else was already there. She stood near a cluster of tall silver leaves, perfectly still. At first glance, Kale thought she was part of the environment itself. Her skin carried a faint pale glow, not bright enough to shine, but enough to catch light differently from other beings. Long hair flowed down her back like liquid glass, reflecting the colors of the plants around her. Kale slowed his steps. He had seen many alien species, but this one was unfamiliar. She turned toward him slowly. Her eyes were large and calm, yet there was something fragile in her expression, like a quiet storm waiting beneath still water.
"Maintenance,"
Kale said gently, raising his console as if it were proof of peaceful intent.
"I'm here to fix the stabilizer."
She studied him for a long moment without speaking. The silence felt heavy, but not uncomfortable. Finally, she nodded once. He walked past her carefully, kneeling beside the energy node embedded in the floor. The readings confirmed his suspicion. The alignment ring had shifted slightly, causing irregular pulses. While he worked, he became aware of her presence again. She was watching him closely, not with suspicion, but with deep curiosity. "You're not from here," he said casually, mostly to fill the quiet.
"I am visiting,"
she replied after a pause. Her voice was soft, almost like music spoken through air. Kale smiled slightly.
"Most of us are." That earned the smallest change in her expression, something close to amusement.
He adjusted a panel and ran a diagnostic. The stabilizer hummed more evenly now, the plants around them glowing brighter as energy flowed correctly again.
"All right," he said, standing up and brushing off his hands. "That should hold."
She stepped closer, her movements graceful but careful, as if she measured each motion.
"You repaired it quickly. I've made worse mistakes myself," he said lightly. Machines are easier to understand than people.
You speak with humor, she said. It's a human habit, he answered with a small shrug.
Another silence followed, but this one felt different, less distant, more thoughtful. Kale glanced around the garden. So, do you work here? She shook her head slowly. I observe. That sounds important. It is lonely, she corrected quietly. The word stayed in the air between them. Kale wasn't sure how to respond, so he gave a small smile instead.
Well, at least the plants are good listeners. Her eyes softened slightly. He checked his console again, preparing to leave.
Before he turned away, he said casually, "If you ever need maintenance again, just call. I'm easy to find."
I usually work alone, no dramatic schedule.
Almost like being married to the job. She froze. The air seemed to change around them. Slowly, she stepped closer until she stood within arm's reach. Her voice dropped to a whisper that felt heavier than before. Then, make me happy. Kyle blinked. For a moment, he thought he had misheard her. Sorry, he said carefully. She looked directly into his eyes, completely serious. You spoke of bonding, of union. If you wish to make such an offer, I accept. Kyle's heart skipped. Realization hit him slowly. Cultural misunderstanding. Oh, he said quickly, raising both hands slightly in apology.
No, I mean, where I'm from, that was just a joke. I didn't mean...
She tilted her head, studying him with intense focus.
You joke about binding promises? Well, yes,
he admitted awkwardly. Humans joke about almost everything. Her expression shifted, something fragile flickering across her face. Not anger, not embarrassment, something quieter. I see, she said softly. KL felt a wave of guilt. He hadn't meant to hurt her. I'm sorry if that sounded wrong, he added. I didn't mean to confuse you. She turned away slowly, her gaze drifting toward the glowing plants. For several seconds she said nothing. Kale wondered if he should leave. Then she spoke again. In my culture, words of union are sacred. They are not spoken lightly. He nodded gently. That makes sense.
Another pause.
But, she continued quietly, you spoke without fear, without calculation.
That is rare. He wasn't sure how to respond to that either.
After a moment, he gave a small laugh. Trust me, there wasn't much calculation. She turned back toward him. This time, there was curiosity instead of distance. What is your name, human? And yours? Lacera. The name felt soft and strong at the same time. Well, Lacera, he said, it was nice meeting you. And again, sorry about the joke. She watched him as if trying to understand something deeper. Humans apologize often, she observed. We make mistakes often, he replied. That seemed to satisfy her. As he turned to leave, he felt something unusual, like a faint warmth brushing against his thoughts. Not words exactly, more like a gentle emotional echo. He glanced back, but Lysera had already stepped away, her attention returning to the plants. Kale left the sector feeling slightly unsettled. Later that day, while he worked in another corridor, his console buzzed with messages. 2 from maintenance supervisors asking about Green 9. 1 from a diplomatic office requesting clarification about an interaction with a visiting alien. He frowned.
How had anyone heard about that already? He opened the message.
It referenced Lysera's species, one he had never encountered before. Apparently, they were known for forming extremely rare emotional bonds.
Kale exhaled slowly. So, Baba.
Not just a misunderstanding, he muttered. The station suddenly felt smaller. He continued working, but his thoughts kept returning to the moment in the garden, the way she had whispered, the seriousness behind her words. By the end of his shift, another message arrived. A request. From Lysera. Simple, polite. She wished to speak again. Kyle stared at the message for a long time before answering. Kyle stared at the message longer than he expected. It was simple, almost formal, but it carried a quiet weight that made him hesitate. Lysera wished to meet again. No explanation. No urgency. Just a request. He leaned back in his chair inside the maintenance hub, watching the blinking lights of his console.
Around him, other workers moved between terminals. Some human, some alien, all focused on their own tasks.
Normally, he would accept quickly. He liked helping people. But this felt different. After a moment, he typed a short reply. He agreed to meet her after his shift ended. The hours passed slowly. Kale found himself distracted, checking his console more often than usual. His mind replayed their first conversation again and again. The seriousness in her voice when she spoke about union. The loneliness she had admitted without hesitation. When his shift finally ended, he walked back towards Sector Green, 9. The corridor lights shifted into softer evening tones, simulating sunset for species that followed natural cycles. Outside the transparent panels, ships moved slowly across the stars. As he entered the botanical sector, the warm air greeted him again. The plants shimmered gently, their colors brighter than before. Lysera stood near a shallow pool of glowing water, her reflection moving slightly with each ripple. She turned as soon as he approached. "You returned," she said quietly.
I said I would, he answered with a small smile. She studied him carefully, as if confirming something only she could sense.
Then she nodded. They walked slowly through the garden together. For a while, neither spoke. The silence felt less heavy now, more peaceful. Finally, Kale said, "I read a little about your species today." She glanced at him. "And what did you learn?" "That emotional bonds are
important," he said carefully. "They are everything," she replied.
Her voice held no pride, only simple truth. Kale hesitated before continuing.
And that your people rarely choose partners.
"Yes," she said, "because many fear true connection."
They prefer control, predictability.
"And you don't?" She shook her head slightly. "I cannot hide what I feel." There was no bitterness in her tone, but Kyle sensed years of quiet rejection behind her words. They stopped near a large plant with wide silver leaves. Soft light reflected across Lysera's face.
"I wish to understand humans,"
she said after a moment. Kale laughed softly.
"Good luck with that. We barely understand ourselves."
"That is what fascinates me," she said. He leaned against a railing. "So, why me?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched the glowing water for several seconds.
You did not approach me with expectation, she said finally. Others speak carefully around me.
They measure their words. You spoke freely.
Oh. That's just being human, he replied. That's just being human, he replied. No, she said gently.
That is being honest. Her gaze met his again, steady and calm. Kale felt slightly uncomfortable under that attention, but not in a bad way.
"I didn't mean to start anything serious," he admitted. "I don't want to hurt you by accident." "You already have," she said softly.
His stomach dropped. But then she added, "Not in the way you fear." She stepped closer, her expression thoughtful. "You showed me that connection can begin without fear," she continued. "That is, painful and beautiful at the same time." KL exhaled slowly. He wasn't used to conversations this direct. Before he could respond, his console buzzed. A message from station administration. He opened it quickly. His eyebrows rose. "Apparently people are asking about us," he said. Lysera tilted her head.
Us? Diplomatic offices, he explained. They want to know why you're spending time with a human technician.
"My presence attracts attention. I can see that," he said dryly. They continued walking, and Kale noticed that other beings had entered the garden. Some watched them openly, curiosity clear in their eyes.
Yes, Lysera replied. Many believe humans are unpredictable.
"That's fair," he said with a small smile. Suddenly, alarms sounded faintly across the station. Not a full emergency, just a warning tone. Kale checked his console quickly. A trade negotiation between two species had broken down nearby. Emotional tensions were rising, and security requested assistance from diplomatic mediators. Lysera paused, her expression changing slightly.
"They are angry," she said. "You can feel that?" he asked.
She nodded. Without hesitation, she began walking toward the exit. Kale followed, unsure but curious. They arrived at a wide chamber where several alien representatives argued loudly. Voices overlapped, gestures sharp and defensive. Security officers stood ready but tense. As Lysera stepped into the room, the atmosphere shifted subtly. She did not speak immediately. She simply stood still, her eyes closed for a moment. Slowly, the volume of the argument lowered. Kale watched in surprise as the representatives paused, confusion replacing anger. Lysera opened her eyes and spoke gently, her voice calm but clear. She addressed each side without taking blame or offering judgment. Instead, she described their emotions as if translating them into neutral language.
"You feel ignored," she said to one group.
"And you feel disrespected," she said to the other. The tension eased further.
Within minutes, the conversation turned from argument to negotiation again. Kale felt genuine awe. He had never seen anything like it. When the situation stabilized, Lysera stepped back quietly, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Several diplomats approached her immediately, speaking in respectful tones. Others glanced at Kale with new interest. He shifted awkwardly under their attention. Later, as they walked back toward the garden, he said, "That was incredible."
"Nay," she looked slightly embarrassed.
"It is only listening." "No," he said firmly. "That was more than that." She didn't respond, but he noticed a faint warmth in her expression. As they reached the botanical sector again, Kyle felt a growing realization. Being around her meant attention, responsibility, and possibly danger. But it also meant something else.
He turned toward her. "Lysera, I don't know where this is going," he said honestly.
But I'm willing to keep talking.
Learning. She watched him carefully.
"That is enough," she said softly. For the first time since they met, she smiled fully.
And Kale realized that what had started as a simple joke was slowly becoming something much deeper, something that might change both of their lives in ways he could not yet understand. Kale did not expect things to change so quickly, but the days after the diplomatic incident felt different. Everywhere he walked on the Orion Ring station, people looked at him with curiosity. Some recognized him as the human who stood beside Lysera when the negotiation crisis ended peacefully. Others simply whispered when he passed. He tried to ignore it and focus on work, but it was difficult. Messages from different departments arrived more often than before. Some were polite questions. Others were formal requests for information. A few were warnings, disguised as advice. One message stood out. It came from a diplomatic oversight committee. They requested a meeting. Kale stared at the notification for several seconds before accepting. He did not like meetings, especially ones that sounded official. Still, avoiding them would only make things worse. Later that day, he walked into a bright conference room, filled with smooth metallic walls and soft lighting. 3 representatives waited inside. A tall, blue-skinned alien with glowing eyes, a human woman in diplomatic uniform, and a smaller creature with long antennae that moved slowly as if sensing the air. "Kale," the human diplomat said with a polite smile.
Thank you for coming.
He nodded and sat down. The blue-skinned alien spoke first. "We wish to discuss your association with Lysera." Kale kept his voice calm. "We talk. That's all."
The smaller alien tilted its head. Your presence influences her behavior.
"That is significant. Why? That she makes her own choices." The diplomats exchanged brief glances. "Her species holds great political importance," the human woman explained gently. "Their emotional abilities affect negotiations across many systems. Any personal bond she forms may carry diplomatic consequences." Coyle leaned back slightly. "So you're telling me to stay away from her?"
No, she said quickly.
"We are asking for awareness. Some factions already question her judgment."
That made his chest tighten.
"Why?" he asked. The blue-skinned alien answered, "Because she chose a human." Kale said nothing for a moment. "I thought humans were accepted now," he said finally. "They are. But acceptance does not remove bias." The meeting ended with polite words, but Kyle walked out feeling heavier. It was no longer just about 2 individuals talking in a garden. Politics had entered the situation. He found Lysera later in the botanical sector. She stood beside the glowing pool again, as if it had become their shared meeting place. "You were summoned," she said quietly when she saw him. "You already know?"
He asked. I sense disturbance around you, she replied.
He exhaled slowly. "They think our friendship is a problem." She did not seem surprised. "My people fear what they cannot control," she said. Hael watched her carefully.
Does it bother you? She looked at him for a long moment. Only if it causes you harm.
Before he could respond, alarms suddenly echoed through the station, louder than before. This time, the sound carried urgency. Kale checked his console. Multiple system failures across nearby sectors, power fluctuations, possible sabotage. He frowned deeply. That's not normal. Security drones moved through corridors, their lights flashing. People hurried past, voices tense. Lysera's expression changed slightly. "Fear spreads quickly. Let's stay out of the way," Kale said. But within minutes, a security officer approached them. "Lysera," the officer said respectfully. "We request your assistance. Emotional unrest is increasing in sector trade." 3.
Kale hesitated. He remembered what happened during the last crisis.
Lysera could help, but attention would grow again. She looked at him briefly, silently asking for his opinion. He nodded. "If you want to help, I'll stay with you." Together, they moved toward the affected sector. The environment there felt chaotic. Flashing lights, raised voices, tension in the air. Traders argued, some blaming others for the power failures. Lysera stepped forward calmly. Her presence alone seemed to slow the panic. She spoke gently, guiding conversations away from blame and toward solutions. Kale watched with admiration. She never raised her voice. She simply understood people. After the situation stabilized, security officers began investigating the cause of the system failures. Hours passed, and Kale assumed everything would return to normal. Then he noticed something strange. Two investigators were watching Lysira closely. One approached her directly. "We require your cooperation in an inquiry." Kael's stomach tightened. "About what?" he asked. "The sabotage," the investigator replied. "Your companion possesses unusual emotional influence." Some witnesses reported sensing disturbances before the power failures. Kael stepped forward slightly. "That doesn't mean she caused anything." The investigator remained calm. "We are not making accusations, only asking questions."
Lysera nodded quietly. "I will cooperate."
They escorted her to an interview room. Kael waited outside, pacing slowly. Time moved painfully slow. His mind raced through possibilities. Someone was looking for a scapegoat, and Lysera's uniqueness made her an easy target. When she finally exited, she looked calm but tired. "They believe I manipulated emotions to create chaos," she said softly.
"That's ridiculous," Kael replied. "Fear rarely listens to logic," she said.
Kael felt anger rising inside him. He wasn't usually confrontational, but this felt unfair.
"I'm going to help prove you didn't do anything," he said firmly. She studied him with quiet warmth.
You do not need to carry this burden. I want to, he answered. Together, they began searching for clues.
Kael used his maintenance access to review system logs. He noticed something unusual, a pattern of small energy spikes before the failures. Not random, intentional.
It's not emotional interference, he said. It's technical.
They followed the trail through multiple sectors. Finally, Kael discovered hidden code inserted into the power system. Someone had planned this carefully. "Sabotage confirmed," he said. Security traced the signal to a group attempting to destabilize relations between species. Their goal was to create mistrust and political tension. Lysira's name was cleared quickly, but the damage from suspicion lingered. As they walked back toward the botanical sector, Kael felt exhausted but relieved.
"You stood beside me," she said quietly.
"Of course," he replied. She stopped walking. "For my people, loyalty during danger defines true connection," she said. "You did not retreat." He shrugged slightly. "That's just what friends do." Perhaps more than friends. The words hung gently between them. Kael felt warmth spread through his chest, mixed with uncertainty. He did not rush to define what they were becoming, but he knew one thing clearly. He would not leave her alone again. And somewhere deep inside, he realized that what began as a misunderstanding had turned into something real. A bond formed through trust, shared challenges, and quiet courage. Kael did not sleep much after Lysera was cleared of suspicion. Even though the investigators confirmed the sabotage came from an outside group, the experience stayed with him. He kept thinking about how quickly people had doubted her simply because she was different. It bothered him more than he wanted to admit. The Orion Ring station slowly returned to normal routines. Lights stabilized, trade resumed, and announcements shifted back to calm, informational tones instead of warnings. Yet something had changed beneath the surface. More people now recognized Lysera, and many also recognized the human who stayed beside her during the crisis. Kael noticed the difference immediately. Workers greeted him more often. Some offered respectful nods, others watched quietly, curiosity still strong. He tried to focus on his job as usual, repairing systems and checking environmental controls, but his life felt less invisible than before. One evening, Lysera sent another message, asking him to meet her at the botanical sector. He smiled when he saw it. Without hesitation, he headed there after finishing his tasks. The garden greeted him with warm air and gentle light. Lysera stood near the glowing pool again, her posture relaxed. When she saw him, her expression softened in a way that felt familiar now. "You look tired," she said. "Long shift," he replied, stretching his shoulders. "And a lot of thinking." She tilted her head slightly. "About us?" He laughed quietly. "You really don't avoid direct questions, do you?" "No," she said simply. They walked slowly along the curved path between tall plants. The station's artificial sky above the garden shifted colors, simulating twilight. "I've been wondering," Kale began carefully, "what happens next for you now that everything is resolved? The council wishes to speak with me. They believe my actions during the negotiations and the crisis show potential for diplomatic service. That sounds like a good thing."
He said, "It is."
"And it is not," she replied. "Such roles require travel, distance." He understood immediately what she meant. Distance from him. Before he could respond, footsteps approached from behind. Several figures entered the garden, diplomats and officials wearing formal attire. Their presence felt serious but respectful.
"Lysira," one of them said with a small bow.
We... Home? We hope we are not interrupting." She turned calmly. "You are expected." KL stepped aside, unsure if he should stay. "You may remain," Lysira said gently, glancing at him. The lead diplomat spoke. "After reviewing recent events, the Council wishes to offer you a position as an interspecies mediator. Your emotional perception has proven invaluable. This role will involve traveling between systems," the diplomat continued. "You would serve as a bridge between cultures. It was a huge opportunity for her, but it also meant their time together might end." "What is your decision?" the diplomat asked. Lysira did not answer immediately. Instead, she turned toward Kale. Her gaze carried a question deeper than words. He swallowed and gave a small encouraging nod. "You should do what makes you happy." Finally, she spoke. "I accept with one condition."
The officials exchanged curious looks. "I wish for the human Kale to join the mission," she said calmly.
Kale blinked in surprise. "Wait, what?"
"He has shown loyalty, empathy, and balance," she continued.
"Qualities necessary for mediation." The lead diplomat considered this carefully. He is not trained as a diplomat.
"He understands people," Lysira replied.
"That is enough." The room fell silent. After a moment, the diplomat nodded slowly. "We will review this request." They left soon after, promising to send confirmation. Kale turned toward Lysira, still processing what happened.
"You didn't warn me about that. You would have said no," she answered gently.
He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped.
She wasn't wrong. "I just didn't expect my life to change this much," he admitted. "Neither did I," she said softly. They sat beside the glowing pool, watching ripples spread across the water. The quiet felt comfortable now, filled with shared understanding. "Do you regret meeting me?" she asked suddenly. He shook his head immediately. "Not even a little." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Days passed while they waited for the council's decision. During that time, Kale noticed how naturally they moved together. Conversations flowed easily. Silences felt peaceful instead of awkward. He realized he looked forward to every message from her, every meeting in the garden. One morning, his console beeped with an official notice. Request approved. He stared at the message, heart beating faster. He had been accepted as part of the mediation team. When he met Lysira later, she already knew.
"You are coming with me," she said, a gentle smile on her face.
"I guess I am," he replied, still amazed. Preparations began quickly. They attended briefings, learned about different cultures, and practiced communication strategies. Kael felt out of place among experienced diplomats, but Lysira stayed close, guiding him quietly when he felt uncertain. The day of departure arrived sooner than expected. A sleek diplomatic ship waited at the docking bay, its surface reflecting starlight like liquid silver. Kael stood beside Lysira as they watched the station from the observation window.
Orion Ring had been his home for years.
Leaving felt strange. Nervous? She asked.
A little, he admitted, but mostly curious.
That is a good balance, she said. Before boarding, he turned toward her. Can I ask you something? Yes. When you whispered, "Make me happy," that first day, did you really mean it?
At that time, I sought peace from loneliness, she said. Now, Rudy, I seek shared happiness.
He felt warmth spread through his chest. They stepped onto the ship together. The doors closed behind them with a soft sound, sealing a new chapter of their lives. As the ship pulled away from the station, Kael looked out at the endless stars. He thought about how everything started with a simple joke, careless words spoken to Phil. Yet those words led him here, beside someone who changed the way he saw connection and trust. Lysira stood close, her presence calm and steady. You once spoke of marriage as humor, she said quietly.
Yeah, he replied, smiling. And now?
Now I think happiness isn't something you promise in a moment, he said slowly. It's something you build together, step by step. Fair, she nodded, her eyes warm. Then we will build it, she whispered. The ship entered hyperspace, stars stretching into light as their journey began, not as a promise made lightly, but as a bond grown through understanding, courage, and the quiet strength of two beings learning to walk forward together.